The worst part about betrayal isn't the pain, it's the confusion. That moment when everything you thought you knew about someone shatters, leaving you to wonder if any of it was ever real. I had that moment 6 months ago, watching my sister Amy systematically destroy everything I'd worked for, all while claiming she was a victim. I'm Charlotte Bennett, and this is the story of how my sister tried to ruin my life, not realizing I had proof of what she'd really done. Growing up, Amy and I were the closest of sisters despite being complete opposites. I was the quiet one, spending hours with my nose in books, dreaming of becoming an architect. Amy was the social butterfly, captain of the cheerleading squad, always the center of attention. We balanced each other out, my calm to her chaos, her spontaneity to my planning. "You're so lucky to have each other," people would say. Sisters who are best friends. And we were best friends through high school, through college, through the early years of our careers. At least that's what I thought. The problem started 3 years ago when we both ended up at Matthews and Stone, one of the top architectural firms in Boston. I was hired as a junior architect, having spent years building my portfolio and reputation. Amy joined the marketing department, handling client relations and social media. At first, it was great having my sister at the same company. We'd meet for lunch, swap office gossip, support each other through tough projects. Then I met James. James Harrison was the firm's rising star, a brilliant architect with a vision for sustainable urban development that aligned perfectly with mine. We started collaborating on projects, our professional chemistry obvious to everyone. The personal chemistry developed more slowly, built on late nights reviewing plans and shared passion for transforming cities. "He's totally into you," Amy would tease during our lunch breaks. "You should go for it." So I did. James and I started dating, keeping it professional at work, but growing closer outside the office. After a year, he proposed. Amy was the first person I told, squealing with excitement as I showed her the ring. "I'm so happy for you." She hugged me tight. "You deserve this, Char. All of it." Looking back, I should have noticed how her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. The engagement coincided with a major opportunity at work. Matthews and Stone was competing to design Boston's new Civic Center, a prestigious project that would put the winning team on the map. James and I were chosen to lead the bid, our complementary styles and shared vision making us the natural choice. That's when things started going wrong. First, our preliminary designs disappeared from the secure server. It eventually recovered them, but we lost 3 crucial days of work. Then key client meetings got mysteriously rescheduled without our knowledge. Emails went missing, presentations got corrupted, deadlines got confused. Mercury must be in retrograde or something, Amy said when I complained about our string of bad luck. But don't worry, I'm sure you'll pull it together. The final presentation was a disaster. Somehow, our carefully prepared materials were replaced with an earlier unfinished version. We looked unprofessional, unprepared. The Civic Center project went to another firm. James was devastated. I was furious. The partners were disappointed. And Amy was sympathetic, but there was something off about her response. "Maybe it's for the best," she said over drinks that night. "You've been so stressed about the wedding planning anyway. Now you can focus on that." The wedding. I'd almost forgotten how many strange things had been happening with that too. Vendors claiming they'd received cancellation emails from me. Deposits going missing. Last-minute problems with everything from the flower arrangements to the caterer's menu. "Wedding planning is always chaotic," my mother said when I mentioned the issues. "Thank goodness Amy's helping you sort everything out." Yes, Amy had inserted herself into every aspect of the wedding planning, offering to handle communications with vendors, saying she wanted to take stress off my plate. I'd been grateful at the time, too busy with work to question it. Then came the incident that changed everything. I was working late one night, trying to rebuild our reputation after the Civic Center disaster. The office was empty except for the cleaning staff. And unexpectedly, I found her in my office, at my computer. "Oh," she jumped when I walked in. I was just looking for that vendor spreadsheet. For the wedding. Something about her reaction felt wrong. The vendor information was in our shared Google Doc. She had no reason to be on my work computer. But before I could question it, she rushed out, saying she was late for drinks with friends. The next morning, James was called into a partner meeting. Someone had reported us for ethical violations. claiming we'd stolen design elements from competitors for the Civic Center bid. They had screenshots of emails, documents that seemed to prove it. We were suspended pending investigation. I can't believe you'd do this to me, James said later, his voice cold. Those emails came from your account, Charlotte, your computer. I didn't. You know I wouldn't. But the evidence looked damning. And in the middle of it all, Amy played the supportive sister perfectly, defending me to anyone who would listen, all while subtly spreading doubt. I just don't understand it, she'd say to colleagues. Charlotte's always been so honest. The pressure must have gotten to her. The investigation dragged on. James and I were cleared of the most serious charges. The partners accepted that the emails could have been planted. But our reputations were damaged. The trust was broken. I need time to think, James said, removing his engagement ring. About everything. I went home that night to find Amy in my apartment, ostensibly bringing comfort food and sympathy. She hugged me as I cried, stroked my hair, told me everything would work out. Maybe James isn't the right one anyway, she said softly. If he doesn't trust you. That's when I saw it. A flash of satisfaction in her eyes, quickly hidden behind sisterly concern. In that moment, all the strange incidents of the past months suddenly connected like dots in a sinister drawing. The missing designs, the corrupted presentations, the vendor problems, the planted emails. It couldn't be, could it? But I had to be sure. The next day, I called in a favor from Marcus, our head of its security. I'd helped design his house last year, a project I'd done on the side. Something's not right, I told him. I need to know who's accessed my computer, my emails, everything. Marcus hesitated. That's not exactly. Please, my career and relationship are falling apart. I need to know the truth. He agreed to help setting up monitoring software and recovering deleted security logs. He also helped me install discrete cameras in my office, their feeds backing up to a secure cloud server. Then I waited, watching, gathering evidence. The rehearsal dinner was in 2 days. Despite everything, we decided to go ahead with the wedding, James agreeing to try to work things out. Amy had been particularly insistent about keeping the date. You can't let a little work drama ruin your special day, she'd said. Trust me, I have everything under control. Those words should have terrified me. But for once, I was counting on my sister's need for control, her compulsion to be the center of attention. Because I knew something she didn't, the cameras had caught everything. Every late-night visit to my office, every deleted file, every planted email. And more importantly, they caught her phone calls, the ones she made when she thought she was alone. The story they told was worse than I'd imagined. The security footage told a story so twisted I could hardly believe it was real. Hours of video showing Amy in my office late at night, methodically sabotaging my work, planting false evidence, making calls to project clients to sow doubt about our team's integrity. But it was the phone conversations that revealed the true depth of her betrayal. Everything's going according to plan, she'd said in one call, thinking she was alone in my office. Charlotte's career is in shambles. James is doubting everything. Soon he'll realize I'm the one he should have been with all along. Marcus had recovered her deleted emails too. Messages to vendors canceling services for my wedding, correspondence with competitors during the Civic Center bid, even a fake email account she created in my name to send incriminating messages. Are you sure you want to do this? Marcus asked as he helped me compile the evidence. She's your sister. Not anymore, I said quietly. She stopped being my sister the moment she decided to destroy my life. The rehearsal dinner was at La Maison, an upscale French restaurant downtown. Amy had insisted on handling the arrangements naturally. As guests arrived, I noticed she'd seated herself next to James at the main table, with me relegated to the far end. James looked uncomfortable but resigned. We'd barely spoken in the past week, the weight of unresolved suspicions hanging between us. My parents chatted nervously, clearly sensing the tension but not understanding its source. Amy was radiant, playing the devoted sister and maid of honor to perfection. She even prepared a speech, she announced, something special she wanted to share with everyone. I let her start, let her stand there in her designer dress, champagne glass raised, all eyes on her, just how she liked it. I've known Charlotte all my life, she began, her voice thick with fake emotion. We've shared everything, secrets, dreams, even our workplace. That's why this is so difficult. She paused dramatically, pulling out a folder. But sometimes love means telling hard truths. I've discovered evidence that my sister, that Charlotte, has been lying to all of us. Gasps around the room. James went pale. My parents looked stricken. These documents prove that Charlotte not only stole designs from competitors. Emmy continued, but she's been embezzling from our wedding fund, canceling vendors and keeping the deposits. That's quite a story, I said, standing slowly. Why don't we watch a movie instead? Before she could respond, I nodded to Marcus, who started the video projection we'd set up. The screen came to life with crystal clear security footage. There was Amy sneaking into my office at midnight, Amy deleting files from my computer, Amy making calls on her cell phone. No, this is Charlotte Bennett. I need to cancel my contract. Yes, keep the deposit. No, don't try to contact me directly. The color drained from her face as her own voice filled the room. James should have been mine. We had a connection at the office Christmas party last year. I know he felt it too. But then Little Miss Perfect had to swoop in. More footage played. Emmy sending emails from my computer. Emmy planting false documents. Emmy laughing on the phone about how perfectly her plan was working. Turn it off, she whispered. Why? I asked. Isn't this the truth you wanted to share? The room had gone deadly quiet. James was staring at Amy with a mixture of disgust and disbelief. My parents looked like they'd been slapped. I can explain, Amy started, but her voice cracked. Let me explain, I said, my voice carrying in a silence. You couldn't stand that I was succeeding on my own merits, that James chose me, that for once in our lives I had something you wanted and couldn't take. That's not. I never. Never what? Never sabotaged my career, never tried to ruin my relationship, never betrayed your own sister out of jealousy and spite. I played one final clip. Amy in my office just yesterday, practicing her rehearsal dinner speech, gloating about how this would be her masterpiece, her final triumph. I'd say your performance was brilliant, I continued as the screen went dark. But brilliance requires originality. All you've done is play the same role you always have. The center of attention, the star of the show. Only this time you went too far. The partners from Matthews and Stone were in attendance. My guests, though Amy hadn't known that when she planned seating. They looked thunderous as they approached her. Ms. Bennett, the senior partner said, I suggest you come to our office first thing Monday morning to discuss your employment status and bring your lawyer. James stood up, finally finding his voice. Charlotte, I am so sorry. I should have trusted you. Yes, I agreed. You should have. My parents were crying quietly in their seats. Mom reached for Amy, but she jerked away, her composure finally cracking. You always got everything, she screamed at me. The grades, the career, the perfect relationship. It wasn't fair. I just wanted what I earned. I finished for her. What I worked for. While you were partying through college and expecting things to be handed to you, I was building my career. While you were flirting with every man in the office, I was developing a real relationship. The only thing that wasn't fair was having a sister who'd rather destroy me than see me succeed. Security arrived, Marcus's final arrangement. They escorted Amy out as she continued to scream about unfairness and betrayal, her mascara running down her face. The aftermath was both easier and harder than I'd expected. Matthews and Stone launched a full investigation, eventually firing Amy and clearing my name completely. Several vendors came forward with recordings of her cancellation calls, and the missing deposits were traced to an account she opened in my name. James and I postponed the wedding, opting for counseling to rebuild our trust. He's working hard to make amends for doubting me, understanding now how skillfully Amy had manipulated everyone. My parents, that's been the hardest part. They're in therapy too, trying to understand how they missed the signs, how their parenting may have contributed to Amy's sense of entitlement and competitiveness. We always said you were lucky to have each other, Mom told me sadly. Maybe we should have taught you both to be worthy of having each other instead. Amy moved across the country after everything came out. Last I heard, she's working at a small marketing firm, under strict supervision. She still maintains she was the victim somehow, that I drove her to it by being too perfect. The wedding finally happened 6 months later, smaller, more intimate, but more genuine. Instead of a maid of honor, I had my closest friends stand with me. People who had supported me through everything. Who had seen through Amy's manipulations even when I couldn't. During the reception, James pulled me aside to show me something. A small album of security photos Marcus had given him, showing me working late nights on the Civic Center project, completely focused, passionate about my work. "This is why I fell in love with you," he said. "Not because of grand gestures or dramatic scenes, but because of your quiet dedication, your genuine passion for what you do." We're back at Matthews and Stone, our reputations not just restored but enhanced by how we handled the crisis. The partners have put us in charge of a new sustainable housing project, bigger than the Civic Center would have been. Yesterday, I found an old photo of Amy and me as kids, grinning at the camera with ice cream on our faces. Sometimes I miss that sister, the one who shared secrets and dreams before jealousy poisoned everything. But then I remember that person never really existed. She was just another role Amy was playing, waiting for her chance to steal the spotlight. The security cameras are gone from my office now, but I've kept one small reminder of everything that happened. On my desk sits a simple frame containing a fortune cookie message I got the day I decided to investigate Amy's betrayal. The truth has a way of coming to light. The only question is whether you're ready to see it. I was ready. It hurt, it changed everything, but it also set me free. Free from manipulation, free from false loyalty, free from the exhausting task of managing Amy's endless need for attention and validation. Last week, a young intern came to me for advice about office politics and difficult colleagues. I thought carefully before answering. Success isn't about defeating others, I told her. It's about being someone who can face herself in the mirror every morning, knowing she's earned her place through hard work and integrity. Amy never understood that. She was so busy trying to take what others had that she never built anything of her own. That's the real tragedy, not that she betrayed me, but that she betrayed herself, becoming exactly the kind of person she always accused others of being. As for me, I'm building things again, buildings, relationships, a life based on truth rather than competition. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about getting better, about refusing to let someone else's darkness dim your light. The truth may hurt, but lies destroy. I chose truth. And in the end, that made all the difference. I'd always been the odd one out in my family. While my older sisters Diane and Rebecca both followed our parents' well-trodden path into corporate law, I chose a different direction, pursuing my passion for sustainable architecture. According to my family, this made me the creative but impractical one, the sister who could never quite get her life together. "Maya, honey, when are you going to get a real job?" Mom would ask during our monthly family dinners, despite the fact that I've been working at the same architecture firm for 7 years. "Architecture is a real job, Mom," I'd reply with practiced patience. "Of course it is, sweetie," she'd say in that tone that meant the exact opposite. "But is it stable?" It didn't matter that I'd helped design award-winning sustainable buildings across the country. It didn't matter that I lived comfortably within my means in a modest but beautifully renovated apartment, because I didn't match their definition of success. Corner office, 6-figure salary, luxury car. They viewed my life choices with a mixture of confusion and pity. My sisters were particularly vocal about my supposed financial instability. Diane, the eldest at 37, never missed an opportunity to remind everyone about her latest bonus or vacation home purchase. Rebecca, 35, was more subtle but equally condescending, offering to help me with my budget whenever I mentioned any purchase larger than a coffee. I learned to brush off their comments over the years, focusing instead on building a life that made me happy rather than one that impressed them. But what happened last spring still makes my blood boil when I think about it. It started with a family dinner in March. Diane had just received a promotion and was in rare form, dominating the conversation with tales of her corporate heroics. So to celebrate, she announced, clinking her fork against her wine glass dramatically, "I've decided to treat the family to a luxury vacation in Bali this summer. 2 weeks at a 5-star resort, all expenses paid." Our parents beamed with pride while Rebecca gasped in delight. "That's incredibly generous, Diane." "Well, it's important to share success with the people who matter," Diane replied, smiling broadly. I waited for her to look in my direction, to include me in the invitation. Instead, an uncomfortable silence fell over the table as everyone suddenly became very interested in their plates. "Maya," Diane finally said, her voice taking on a delicate tone that immediately put me on edge, "we were thinking this trip might be a bit much for your situation." My situation? I repeated, setting down my fork. You know, Rebecca chimed in with Fox concern. With your career being more passion-driven than profit-driven, the time off alone would be a financial hit for you. Not to mention the spending money you'd need, Diane added. We're planning some exclusive excursions that are quite costly. I felt heat rising to my face as I realized what was happening. Are you saying I'm not invited to the family vacation because you think I can't afford it? No, no, Mom interjected quickly. They're just concerned about putting you in an awkward position. We know how independent you are, Dad added, clearly uncomfortable. You wouldn't want us paying your way. Even though we absolutely would, Diane said with artificial sweetness that made my teeth hurt. But we know your pride wouldn't allow it. The assumption was so wildly off base that I almost laughed. While I lived more modestly than my sisters by choice, I was far from struggling financially. In fact, thanks to some smart investments and my habit of saving rather than showing off, I was in an excellent financial position. But before I could correct their misperception, Rebecca spoke up again. Actually, Maya, there is something you could help us with while we're away. I should have seen it coming. Both our regular nannies are unavailable those weeks, she continued, and we were hoping you might watch the kids. They love their Auntie Maya, and we pay you, of course. 5 children, 2 weeks, while they sipped cocktails on a Balinese beach. Let me get this straight, I said slowly. I'm not invited on the family vacation because you think I can't afford it, but you want me to babysit your children for 2 weeks while you're all gone. When you put it that way, it sounds terrible, Diane laughed, waving her hand dismissively. Think of it as house sitting with benefits. You get to stay in our homes, use our pools. We'd stock the fridges, Rebecca added helpfully. I looked around the table, waiting for someone, anyone, to acknowledge the absurdity of the situation. Instead, they were all nodding as if this was a perfectly reasonable arrangement. I'll have to check my schedule, I managed to say, which they immediately interpreted as agreement. The conversation moved on, but I remained silent for the rest of the meal, a plan already forming in my mind. Over the next few weeks, Diane and Rebecca ramped up their vacation planning, creating a family group chat that excluded me where they shared resort photos and excursion options. Meanwhile, they created a separate chat with just me to coordinate the childcare details, when to pick up each child, their schedules, dietary restrictions, and an ever-growing list of rules and requirements. I responded politely but noncommittally, neither agreeing to nor refusing their requests outright. Whenever they pressed for confirmation, I'd cite work commitments that I needed to sort out first. This is exactly why you need a more structured career path, Diane texted after I mentioned potential work conflicts. Corporate jobs have clear vacation policies. I didn't bother explaining that my unstructured career had actually given me considerable flexibility and autonomy. I was saving that revelation for later. A month before their scheduled departure, I finally agreed to meet them for coffee to finalize the arrangements. They arrived with color-coded binders for each child, looking relieved that their child care plan was coming together. We can't thank you enough, Maya, Rebecca said, sliding a binder across the table. The kids are so excited to have their fun aunt staying with them. About that, I said, taking a sip of my coffee. I'm afraid I won't be able to watch the children after all. Their expressions fell in perfect synchronization. What do you mean? Diane demanded. We've been planning this for months. No, you've been planning this for months, I corrected her. I never actually agreed to it. I said I needed to check my schedule, and I have. It turns out I'll be out of the country those weeks. Out of the country? Rebecca echoed incredulously. Where could you possibly be going? I smiled. Bali, actually. The silence that followed was deeply satisfying. That's not funny, Maya, Diane finally said. I'm not joking. I've booked my own trip to Bali. Different resort, different dates. I'm leaving a week before you and staying a week longer, actually. But how can you afford? Rebecca caught herself, but not quickly enough. Afford it. I finished for her. Quite easily, as it happens. Contrary to what you all seem to believe, I'm not struggling financially. I may not flaunt my money like you do, but that doesn't mean I don't have any. Their disbelief would have been comical if it wasn't so insulting. You should call a professional childcare service, I suggested, gathering my bag. They'll need some advance notice. I left them sitting there, mouth still slightly agape, feeling lighter than I had in years. The next few weeks brought a barrage of texts and calls. First from my sisters, then from my parents when their appeals failed to move me. The messaging evolved from indignation to guilt-tripping to, finally, grudging offers to include me in their trip after all. "We never meant to exclude you," Diane claimed in a particularly revisionist voicemail. There must have been a misunderstanding. I didn't bother responding. Instead, I focused on my own travel preparations and a special project I'd been working on in my spare time. As the departure date approached, my mother called with one last attempt at reconciliation. "Your sisters feel terrible about the misunderstanding, Maya. They want to make it right. Won't you at least come to the airport to see everyone off? The children would love to say goodbye to their aunt." I considered refusing, but the opportunity was too perfect to pass up. "Sure, Mom. I'd be happy to." The morning of their departure, I arrived at the international terminal dressed casually but tastefully, a simple envelope in my hand. My parents and sisters were already there with their mountain of luggage and 5 overexcited children running in circles around them. Auntie Maya, my nieces and nephews cried in unison when they spotted me, rushing over for hugs. "We're going on an airplane to see monkeys," my youngest nephew informed me solemnly. "That sounds amazing, buddy," I said, giving him an extra squeeze. My sisters approached more cautiously, their expressions a mixture of discomfort and forced cordiality. "Thanks for coming to see us off," Diane said stiffly. "The kids are thrilled." I nodded, then held out the envelope. "I brought something for you, a parting gift." Rebecca took it, eyeing me suspiciously. "What is this?" "Open it." Inside was a detailed financial portfolio statement with my name at the top. I'd redacted some personal information but left the totals clearly visible: my investment accounts, retirement funds, property equity, and liquid assets. The bottom line was highlighted in yellow, a number that made both my sisters' eyes widen. "Is this real?" Diane asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Completely. I've been investing since I was 22, living below my means, making smart choices with my money instead of showing it off." I took the paper back and returned it to the envelope. "I could buy that resort you're staying at if I wanted to. But unlike some people, I don't measure my worth or others by their bank accounts." The airport announcement system called their flight for boarding, but neither of my sisters moved, still processing what they'd just seen. "Maya, we had no idea," Rebecca began. "That was the point." I cut her off. "You never bothered to ask. You assumed that because I chose a different path, I must be struggling. You excluded me from a family vacation because of your own biases and then expected me to be grateful for the chance to babysit your children while you enjoyed yourselves." "We made a mistake," Diane admitted, looking genuinely contrite for perhaps the first time in her adult life. "We should have included you." "Yes, you should have. Not because I can afford it, but because I'm your sister." The boarding announcement repeated, more urgently this time. "You should get going," I said, stepping back. "Wouldn't want to miss your flight." "Wait," Rebecca said suddenly. "If you're so financially secure, why did you let us believe otherwise all these years? Why live in that small apartment and drive that old car?" I smiled. "Because I value experiences over possessions, sustainability over excess, and authenticity over appearances. My life looks exactly the way I want it to, whether you understand that or not." With that, I hugged each of my nieces and nephews, promised to bring them souvenirs from my own Bali trip, and walked away, leaving my sisters to make a mad dash for their gate. They missed their flight. I know this because I was already relaxing in the airline lounge, waiting for my own departure later that day. I'd actually changed my plans when Mom had convinced me to come to the airport. Why drive there twice? My flight to Bali, in business class, wasn't leaving for another 4 hours. As I sipped my complimentary champagne, my phone buzzed with a text from Mom. "Girls missed their flight. Rebooking for tomorrow. What did you say to them?" I didn't reply. Some lessons are worth missing a flight for. My time in Bali was transformative, not because of the luxury resort or the infinity pool, though those were nice, but because for the first time in my adult life, I felt completely free of my family's expectations and judgments. I hiked through rice terraces, learned traditional cooking techniques from local chefs, participated in a community-led reforestation project, and sketched designs for my own sustainable tiny house that I'd been dreaming about building. I returned home renewed and more certain than ever about my chosen path. 2 days after I got back, there was a knock at my apartment door. I opened it to find both my sisters standing awkwardly in the hallway, looking uncharacteristically humble. "Can we come in?" Diane asked. I hesitated, then stepped aside to let them enter. They looked around my modest apartment with new eyes, not with pity or condescension, but with curiosity and perhaps a touch of envy at the evident thought and care in every detail, from the living wall of plants to the custom-built furniture I designed myself. "Your place is actually really beautiful," Rebecca admitted, running her hand along the reclaimed wood counter I'd installed. "Thank you." An uncomfortable silence fell until Diane finally spoke. "We owe you an apology, a big one." "Yes, you do," I agreed, not making it easier for them. "We were wrong to exclude you from the trip based on assumptions about your finances," Rebecca said, "and even more wrong to then expect you to watch our children." "It was entitled and thoughtless," Diane added. "And when we saw your portfolio," she shook her head, "it was a wake-up call about how little we actually knew about your life." I studied their faces, looking for the sincerity I'd rarely seen from them before. Surprisingly, it seemed genuine. Bali was enlightening, Rebecca continued. "Being there, seeing a different culture, it made me realize how caught up we've been in a very narrow definition of success. Our kids wouldn't stop talking about how cool Auntie Maya's job is, designing buildings that help the environment," Diane said with a hint of a smile. "Jackson told his entire kids club that his aunt is saving the planet while we just push papers around." I couldn't help but laugh at that. Kids have a way of cutting to the truth. "We'd like to start over," Rebecca said hesitantly. "Get to know the sister we apparently never bothered to understand." "Maybe you could show us what you actually do," Diane suggested. "Your current projects. We've never really asked, and that's on us." I considered their offer. Years of dismissal and judgment couldn't be erased with one apology. But people can change when their perspectives are forcibly shifted. And while I have found peace in my independence, there was a part of me that had always wished for a genuine connection with my sisters. "I'm working on designs for a community of affordable, sustainable homes," I said finally. "I could show you the site next weekend, if you're free." The relief on their faces was palpable. "We'll be there," they promised in unison. As they prepared to leave, Diane paused at the door. "One more thing. Dad's 70th birthday is coming up next month. We were thinking of a family trip to the California wine country, a real family trip this time. Would you help us plan it? You've always had better taste than we have." I smiled, nodding. "I'd like that." After they left, I sat in my living room surrounded by the life I'd built for myself. Modest by their standards, perhaps, but intentional and fulfilling in ways they were only beginning to understand. The path to rebuilding our relationship would be long, but for the first time, it seemed possible. Sometimes the most effective revenge isn't about getting even, but about finally being seen for who you truly are. 2 weeks later, I met my sisters at the construction site for my sustainable housing project. They showed up wearing impractical shoes and looking out of place among the dirt and building materials. But they were there, asking questions, listening intently as I explained the solar systems and water reclamation designs. "This is actually incredible, Maya," Diane said, genuine admiration in her voice as she studied the plans. "You're building homes people can actually afford that don't destroy the planet." "Meanwhile, we're helping billionaires become trillionaires," Rebecca added with a self-deprecating laugh. As we walked back to our cars, Rebecca linked her arm through mine, a small gesture that would have seemed impossible months ago. "You know what Jackson asked me yesterday?" Diane said, brushing dust from her sleeve. "He wanted to know if it was too late for Mommy to become an architect like Auntie Maya." I raised an eyebrow. "And what did you tell him?" She smiled. "I told him it's never too late to follow a better path." Nothing had changed overnight. My sisters still lived in their mansions and worked their high-powered jobs. I still preferred my sustainable apartment and meaningful career. But something fundamental had shifted in how we saw each other, not as competitors on the same narrow track, but as women who had chosen different paths worth respecting. And really, that acknowledgement was worth more than any luxury vacation could ever be.